Hello, we are live at the 2% Scaling Strategies for Women Entrepreneurs. And today I am so excited for my very special guest, Alex Carter. We are going to be talking about powerful negotiation secrets and tactics. We have a bunch of pre-submitted questions here for us. This is an Ask Us Anything, but you know that you can go ahead and post in the comments with your questions. We're streaming to multiple platforms. My team is watching and they will be sending me your questions as we get going. So all about negotiation, one of the most powerful skill sets that you can use, not just in business. We think about it all the time with respect to negotiating for compensation or negotiating deals in business, but negotiation is such a powerful skill and tool to have to help you be more successful in life generally. So I can't think of anybody better to come in and share negotiation secrets and tactics than Alex Carter. She is the author of the book, Ask for More, 10 Questions to Negotiate Anything. She's a clinical professor of law and a director of the mediation clinic at Columbia Law School. She has spent the last 11 years helping thousands of people negotiate better, including today, all of y'all. And she has taught them how to negotiate better, how to build relationships and reach their goals. In 2019, Alex was awarded the Columbia University Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching, which is Columbia's highest teaching honor. She has taught people at the UN how to negotiate better. You know, you've been doing a few things with your life, Alex.
And that's just the day job, Eleanor, you know?
I know. We're like, no scrubs around here. No scrubs. So listen, I want to kick off by checking in. How are you doing? How is your book was launched this week? Super exciting, big book deal, Simon & Schuster. Take us behind the scenes. How has it been going?
Well, Eleanor, so I woke up on Tuesday morning and felt elated. You know, lifelong dream achieved. You know, I set a few lifetime goals and I achieved them all as of Tuesday morning. So time to set new ones, right?
Yeah.
I know, it's an amazing feeling. I'm 44. I got my whole life ahead of me. So I wake up, have this amazing feeling, and then I get two calls. One is to say that my father, who's already in hospice with a brain disease, was diagnosed with COVID and was going on morphine. That was the first call. The second call was my book was out of stock on Amazon. And I thought, this is great. I knew we had sold a lot. Turns out because of COVID, they had supply chain disruptions that meant that nobody would be able to get shipped books this week. And my sales would not count until next week. So
just to back this to take people, like tell people what that means and why that's such a, I know what that means. I want to make sure that everybody here knows and why I'm going to invite you all to buy Alex's book on Monday.
Okay. So when it's almost like a military level strategy. When an author launches a book, all of her pre-sales go into the week one sales. That is usually your best chance to make a tremendous impact, hit the bestseller lists, and all of that. Amazon is the single largest book retailer. What this means, in effect, is that I'm not going to have the largest piece of my generated book sales count for the first week. It is kind of devastating news for somebody who has prepared 2 weeks for a launch. And Eleanor, you do launches all the time, right? You know, this is a launch, and so does your team of women. Mm-hmm. And so imagine this. So now they'll be split up among 2 weeks. And so next week is, in fact, that's my new launch week. So I'm basically relaunching the book on Monday and asking people to support and to amplify the message so that when the Amazon sales hit, we can create as big a buzz as possible.
Yeah. And, you know, and this was, as we sort of got on in the green room, we were talking through what your week has been like. If you don't follow Alex on Instagram, go ahead and follow on Instagram, because she had a post this morning and it's just, you can tell like you are overcome with emotion. And I'm looking at it and I was like, wow, she must be really excited about the launch of the book. No, those were real tears. They were not necessarily tears of joy. But we're going to come up with a way to help you around this, because I know that, there is nothing like a group of women who are determined to help a sister out.
This week, right? Eleanor, the number of women who have come out, on email, on text, on social media, and said, Alex, what can I do to support you? Or didn't even ask, just went out and got me support. I showed my husband one of the emails and I said, do men do this for each other? And he said, no. He said, men are more likely to ask, right? We're more likely to ask for ridiculous favors out of the blue, but nobody is emailing me saying, how can we support and amplify you?
Right. Yeah. Men are more likely to ask. Women are more likely to offer.
Right. Pretty much.
Generalization. Yeah. But here's I just want to kind of explore this, because I think this, these experiences were just, a huge accomplishment. So, the work that you've done, the training that you've done, the experience that you've had, you make it into this incredible book, which we're going to talk about in a moment, Ask for More. And then it's launch week. And like you said, so much, like we were talking in my incubator group yesterday about what it takes to get bestseller status. And it is, like you say, that military level precision. And to arrive at that, and the very moment that you are like, this is time to celebrate, is the time where like, wow, this is not at all. Now, sometimes when you go through a period like that, what you want to do, a lot of times what I want to do is just retract, like put the covers over my head, not show up. How did you manage? Tell me a little bit about the internal, because you've just shared with us what you did externally to pivot. What went on inside to be able to show up, to be present to this, and to just handle it with such grace?
Thank you. When I got those calls, I had a moment where I was going to retract. Mm-hmm. I had a moment where I was going to go forward with all of the social media content, all the promotional posts that I had scheduled and planned. And then in the next moment, it was gut. I thought, that's not authentic. That's not right. And what my brand is, part of my brand and who I am, is I show up as myself 100% all the time. And I think that is, in fact, the source of my power. I used to think, Eleanor, when I was a younger woman, that power meant showing bulletproof all the time, never letting it down, never letting people see a crack or a flaw or a doubt. And now I know better, because I know now that when I show humanity, I bring people along for my journey. And so I just sat down totally raw and I filmed a video telling people exactly what had happened that morning. And the effect it produced was massive. I have received almost 1,000 emails, texts, calls from people saying that it inspired them to get out and show up this week too, through what they were going through. And isn't that what we all want? The fact is that transparency breeds trust. When people know they're getting the real you, that is someone they want to be in community with.
So true. And it's so fascinating what you're sharing here. And we were talking about this in the green room, and I completely relate. Like, as a younger woman, I really thought that it was all about having all my ducks in a row, having my message perfectly on point and clear and scripted. And to be quite honest, it was about that back then, because I was learning. I was learning, how do you craft a message? How do you craft an idea? But then it's like you can get stuck there, and it's so important to kind of graduate from that and to move into this place of sort of skill building, to deep self-trust, where you are able and you have that bone deep confidence and conviction in self to let people in, and to share your path like that. So for y'all who are listening, and I don't know why I'm all of a sudden a Southern belle right now. For y'all,
I do that too.
Right?
And it's from Brooklyn, Eleanor. I don't know.
I don't know. Everybody just wants to be from Charleston. So for you who are listening, like, take that in, because I think, that power of bringing people along with you. So yeah, and guys, if you haven't had a chance to listen to our conversation on the podcast, we get into, right? That was so much fun. That was an epic.
I have to say, that was epic. I think it was my favorite interview. I've gotten more feedback on that interview than any other I did.
Love. We should take the show on the road.
I would love it. We'll do this once a week. Sounds great.
Exactly. Just people ask us anything about your negotiations. We want to know. So guys, we're going to get into Alex's philosophy around negotiation in the podcast episode. Team, I know you guys are watching. If you can put the link to the podcast episode in the comments, Flash News, that would be awesome. Meanwhile, while they're doing that, the territory I did want to recover is, what is negotiation? Like, how do you define negotiation? Because I think understanding that is the key to understanding the powerful ideas and questions that you share in the book to help us be better negotiators.
Yeah, I'd love to. And in fact, I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to talk about how it connects up with your work in the messaging lab, right?
Beautiful,
so negotiation is not, if you were taught on this call that it was a back and forth over money, right? So just that transactional haggling that occurs right before you sign a deal, it's actually not that. Negotiation is steering relationships. It's any conversation you have in which you are steering a relationship. And so that could be, yes, of course, with the people in your home, whoever that might be. It's with your entire team. It's with your customers. And it's with the customers or clients you have yet to reach. Every communication, every interaction is an opportunity to teach people how to value you and your work, and to steer that relationship for mutual gain. And when we think about negotiation as steering relationships and not just the transactions, then we take this holistic view that really helps us build partnerships. Eleanor, on the podcast, we talked about, this is the line that I've gotten the most feedback on, how to recruit instead of request.
Can you just tell this story? Because literally, you need to go listen to the podcast. Like, don't use this as an excuse to not use. There's so much gold in there. But this story, I was like, oh my gosh, it was so good.
So it's interesting because I used to think, because I wasn't the most aggressive person out there, that I couldn't be a good negotiator, but I am really great at steering relationships. So when I was in the process of building this military strategy to launch this book, I'd never done this before, but I went back to ask for more. And I asked one of the questions, which is, how have I handled this successfully in the past? And I thought about a time that I needed to bring a large number of people along for a message, to communicate powerfully and persuasively, and to have them participate in this with me. And I thought about the time that I successfully ran my husband's campaign for local office. And I had these political operatives in my living room, all guys, helping him out. And I went in there and I looked at the map of my town and I said, you know what? I know a mom in pretty much like almost all of those districts. So I went out and I didn't request people's vote. I recruited them to my team. So instead of requesting, I recruit. What does that mean? It means that I put people on my same side of the table. So when I went out to think about promoting this book, I did not reach out 2 years ago and say, Eleanor, please buy my book in 2 years when it comes on sale. I reached out to people and I said, help me make this message better. What can you contribute? What stories do you have? What advice do you have? I'd like to bring you along for this. So you know what that meant? That meant on Tuesday, when the you-know-what hit the fan, okay, and I was totally unable to go out and promote my book as I had planned, that 600 to 700 people who were on my Ask for More launch team went out and did it for me. They went out and they were ambassadors, they were co-conspirators, they are co-owners of the success of this book. This is the principle that I use to steer all my relationships. I don't request, I recruit. So if I'm looking for speaking business and I talk to somebody at a company who I know is the gatekeeper, I don't treat that person like a gatekeeper. I ask her what her goals are, how, where she sees herself in a couple of years. I give her some coaching advice. And then you know what? She recruits, right, to go out and get the speaking business. So when in doubt, when you're steering your relationships, put people on your team.
This is so powerful because if you think about it, like I can honestly, guys, and it is so interesting when you realize, like when Alex was sharing this on the podcast, I was like, that's so fascinating, because what was it about Alex where I'm like, so we're connected on Instagram and we get people all the time who are like, hey, can we be on your show? Would it be great? And that's awesome. It's just like the real estate is limited, right? And so it's not always a fit. but I was like, man, I've got to have Alex on the show. And you know what, Alex, since we're talking, I'm like, you know what, we also need to do a LinkedIn Live. And you know what, we're going to tell people to go buy your book. Alex is a master, and it's completely authentic. It's completely authentic. All of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? We need everybody to ask for more. We need this book in the hands of every woman out there. And you're just kind of in, and it's fun, right? And I think that's the cool thing when you are recruiting, you're both on the same side. So you're not on opposite sides of the table, you're on the same side.
That's
How
right.
does this, because, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this, on how this relates to your message. You know what I mean?
Yes, for sure. Right. You know, and part of negotiation is messaging. You know, it's steering your relationships. In the messaging lab, I imagine that people are steering their relationships with people they haven't met yet.
Yeah.
You know, they're teaching sort of the public how to think about them and how to value them. And here's the thing, Eleanor, I think when you bring people along for a journey, when you tell a story and you share authentically, that makes people want to be on your side of the table, right? You are recruiting them in the process of communicating powerfully about who you are and what you stand for in a way that invites other people in and makes them think, I too could do that. You know, the other thing about messaging is you have to message to the right people. So I did not, in fact, Eleanor, slide into the DMs of every, feminine-oriented podcast on iTunes. You know, I think that, you know, part of messaging is knowing yourself extremely well. That's part of the questions and ask for more, is to get to know yourself. And I know myself extremely well, and I know who the matches are for my message. And when I heard your podcast and I saw your presence, I thought, this is going to be a blockbuster conversation. And I have to say, it was. I played it for my daughter in the kitchen that morning when it came out, right?
Yep.
And she loved hearing two powerful women. It's just, you know, it produces such a ripple effect out there in the world when you find the people who were meant for you.
Totally, right? Yeah, no, I completely 100% agree. So I would love to share what you think. So there's a couple of things that are going on in what you just shared, which is, first of all, really to be able to negotiate effectively, to steer the conversation toward mutual benefit, to steer the relationship rather to mutual benefit, you do have to know yourself. And not only that, you have to really value yourself first. And I think that that's something that that's something that some people are lucky enough to grow up and have, you know, really have that sense of valuing themselves. And some of us, it's an ongoing thing, you know, it's this ongoing negotiation with self, maybe. How has your negotiation changed, your ability to negotiate changed as you have evolved in the way that you value yourself?
Dramatically.
Right.
You know, I actually was painfully shy as a child. I was a bookworm. I felt that I had trouble connecting with people and making friends. And so it was a deliberate process of growing comfortable with myself enough to extend myself, to, you know, speak powerfully in front of people. I will say, Eleanor, even into my 20s, I still felt like it was more acceptable for me to advocate for other people than it was to advocate for myself. And I think a lot of young women are given that message and absorb that message, you know, and internalize it to the point where now when you're in a crisis, you're going to be even less likely to get out and offer what you have. But it was the moment when I first negotiated my salary, and I can't remember if I told you this story, but they came in above. And I didn't know what to do. And I called a senior woman in my field and I said, I'm not sure what to do. They came in above. And she said, Alex, I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to get in there and you're going to ask for more. And I said, I'm going to ask for more. And she said, yes, because when you teach someone how to value you, you teach him how to value all of us. And so if you're not going to go in there and do it for yourself, then I want you to go in there and do it for the sisterhood. And that is when I realized I'm such a service-oriented person. It's my highest calling. that when I advocate for myself, I am serving other women. I am creating space at the table. I am raising the tide that will lift other boats. And that was the moment that I thought, I have an obligation. It's not optional. I have an obligation to get out there and promote my message, promote my expertise. I'd love to talk about promoting expertise also, Eleanor, because I think that goes into the dollars, right? And to ask for more on every occasion.
Well, and it's interesting because you kind of recruited yourself into a bigger mission, you know, you recruited yourself into a bigger mission. And that's really, I mean, that is so powerful. Like I remember, you know, a friend of mine who started a perfume company. This was years ago. And this was before the age of the influencer. And she was really out there sharing her message on social media and telling her story. And this was before it was a normal thing to do, you know, before live video was normal, all of that kind of stuff. She was out there doing it. And I was like, how do you do this? And she's like, it's not about me. It is. It's about my business, but it's about something so much bigger than me. And every time I make it about something bigger than me, that's kind of this expansive. Now you're not into the like nitpicky territory. I want this. I want this. It's a more expansive conversation, I think, you know.
It is, absolutely. I think people want to come along for a mission. You know, we talked about this on the podcast a little bit also, but even when, you know, as a professional speaker, you know, when I'm going out and connecting with organizations, I'm never selling. I'm looking for partners. I'm very upfront. I say my mission is empowerment and equity through negotiation. I see negotiation as a tool to help each person achieve her highest and best, and also for us as a collective to come together and make space for everybody at the table. And so if that message and that mission is a match for you, then I'd love to partner together to spread that.
Oh, so good. That's so good. And it's so clear, you know, and I mean, I think that's the other thing. It's about, there's so much freedom when you're clear in who you are and what it is.
That's
you know,
right.
So much clarity in that. So much clarity in that.
And let me tell you, as somebody who experiences your clarity on the other side, okay, you are laser focused on who you are serving, who your best yeses are. And let me tell you, as a listener, when I'm driving in the car to Columbia Law School and I hear Eleanor talking about false facts and I make a wrong turn because every moment, everything she's saying, I'm thinking, yes, 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 right? When you speak to your audience with laser clarity like that, you create so much impact. You don't dilute it, you concentrate it.
Cool. I love that. I love that feedback, right? Because you make podcasts just like you write a book. It's just kind of you and you're sitting there doing it, you know? And so it's great to hear how it's landing. I remember we talked about that on direct message on Instagram. So listen, we've got some questions. I'd love to have all of your time, but we have had people submit some questions. So here's one of the questions, and this is kind of about value. So Kemi is asking, listen, it's COVID-19 era. How do you ask clients for an upward review of contract sum? Like, how do you ask for more, you know, in an age where the economy is contracting?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're asking this question, because I think it's all too easy for women right now to just eat it and say, I'm going to go along to get along and I'm not going to raise this. So the first thing I would do is to figure out the problem that you are trying to solve and exactly what you need. I would take a little bit of time to get really clear on exactly, and don't reduce it. You know, don't say, here's what I need just to barely survive. I would figure out what it is you need to continue to thrive and really provide your best to this client and to the rest of your clients for the short and medium and long term. Okay, so you're going to get really clear. Then I would go in and I would be figuring out what exactly that client needs. Like, what important need are you serving for that client? And then you do the magic part. You create what I call an we ask. Here's what I'm requesting, and here's how we benefit. I've done a careful study of what you're going to need for the long term. And I've done a careful study of what I need to be your best strategic partner and put out the work that you are going to need. And here is what that is going to require. Okay, so that's kind of the messaging around this. The we get as much input as possible, frame it, And then my last piece of advice is to be very careful about timing and delivery. This is a time right now when people are bombarded. They have a lot of things going on. They may be arguing with their kids over homeschooling. Do not do a sneak attack, right? Set up a time that is best. And then I would try to do it over a platform where they can see your face, because it's been proven that the more we can see, the more we trust. So I would try to replicate an in-person as much as possible.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. And then let's talk about the other side. So let's talk about, and this is a question, you know, which is like, what happens? Let's say you're negotiating, you're on the other side of that, and you're like, that was my best offer. You know what I mean? Like, that was totally my best offer. I can't do what you're asking for. So you're on the other side. What does that, like, what advice or tips, how should we be thinking about that?
Yeah, great point. You know, I do think that honesty and clarity here is really important, right? And the way you just communicated that, when you know that something can't work for you, people hear that. You know, I can always tell when somebody's delivering something to me and they say, yeah, that's not going to be possible. And I think it's totally possible.
Yeah.
And somebody says to me,
right there.
Right? Yeah. And then somebody says, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I know. I mean, I would then be thinking about, what is the counter proposal? You know, there are two approaches you could take. Yeah. It's always best to come into these things prepared, so that if the person says, I need X, and you're looking and you're like, nope, that's not going to happen, you come prepared to say, here's why. You know, here's something else I can do. I would then be thinking about, okay, if Eleanor is my counterpart and I can't fulfill everything that she's asking for on the money, I might think to myself, okay, well, what else does Eleanor need? You know, she might need to show consistent cash flow through this time, such that even if I need to temporarily reduce, that's going to be more beneficial to her than a total cessation. We also might be able to work out an extension. There are lots of different things you can counteroffer with.
Well, and I love this because it comes back to right fit. You know what I mean? And so if you're thinking about, if you're steering, like, a lot of times the deal is the tip of the iceberg. There's been so much relationship building, so much work that's done to get you to that point.
The relationship creates the deal, and not the other way around. And that is especially true in a crisis. May I say, the only reason I got through this crisis with book sales and everything else is because I had relationships. I had capital that I could call on when I needed it, right? So always remember to create the relationship first.
So there's one more, and we're getting close to time. There's another question here. I'm not going to be able to get to all the questions that were submitted. Sorry, guys. But here's another question that was submitted, and it's something that I see, especially women entrepreneurs who can experience and deal with. And it comes up a lot as I'm having conversation with clients and people. It's about kind of burying the value. So I'll give you an example. It's really easy you have something great, you know, and then you start adding more into it, you know. So you are, you know, because you could make it better, you could make it stronger, you know. When that's a negative thing, we call it scope creep. You know? And sometimes it's like things are going beyond the contracted agreement. And the other side of that is just kind of adding things in, but never actually acknowledging or claiming the value of them. You see this, you know, and any tips around owning value and making sure that you're claiming value when you are, you know, adding to programs or adding to offers or adding to contracts, like throwing things in.
Yeah, it's interesting, Eleanor. Sometimes I think people throw things in, and then sometimes I think they forget that there are different points of value embedded in a product they have already offered. For example, I used to just go ahead and offer clients the option to have me in to speak and to tape it then for unlimited use. I then started to think, you know, what are all the different value points that I deliver? And, you know, the taping and recording was a pretty substantial one. And so I actually pulled that out and started thinking about ways to monetize that. So I would challenge women, you know, take a look at all the different timelines at which you are providing value, or the ways that you are providing value, break them out, and then think about valuing them separately. right? As a way to really encompass all of what you are delivering.
Yeah, I love that. That guys, value points, like identifying value, that's huge, because if you don't do it consciously, it's happening, the value is there anyway, but there is something I think really powerful about women claiming value, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is absolutely huge. Okay. We're going to handle one more question. Here's a great question that was submitted through to us. Do women negotiate differently than men?
That's very interesting. So I would say, I think many do, not all, right? And some of what could be described as a more feminine negotiating style, I've seen plenty of men, right? And we all know these days that gender is an expansive concept. In general, I think that women know that they are walking a tightrope. And for women of color out there, they are walking multiple tightropes, right? Where on the one side, so as a white woman, right, on the one side, I could be too aggressive or self-promoting, value claiming. On the other side, I'm a worker bee, I'm submissive, I'm not a leader. And so I have worked with Eleanor, many, many very accomplished women at the top of their organizations who are keenly aware of how much space they take up in a room, what words they use to advocate for their position, or even how they describe their expertise. And so I do think that women, rightly so, absorb, what is out there and get the message, right, that there is this tightrope that they're walking. They have to demonstrate leadership. They don't want to come across in a way that's going to, hurt their cause or turn people off.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. There's one thing as we kind of wrap up here, and this was something that I wanted to share, which has been so powerful for me in terms of all kinds of negotiations. It's not being afraid. It's really, and this was so interesting. And it was kind of like this hangover from being a younger woman, but
Yes.
also a hangover from, when my business was in startup mode, and it all counts. You really need people to say yes. You need to get your business off the ground. You need for this to happen. And so for that reason, you are intentionally and consciously maybe saying yes to things that you wouldn't normally say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the transitions that I had, and you could argue that I never actually needed to do that, or the women who are listening never actually needed to do that. And that would be a fair argument, worth making. Regardless, there comes a time when you absolutely should not be doing that anymore, when you don't need to. But what I found so interesting was there in a lot of my negotiations, there was this underlying fear. What if they say no? Right? And the no is like, who cares? Like with love, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like, I
think for guys, this is like another day at the office. They're like, okay, no, next, moving on to the next one, right? And we're sitting there like, oh God, they might say no. I used to be like that too. And then I realized that no is just the start of the conversation. In fact, over the last 2 months, I have turned more than a dozen no's to yeses. And I didn't have to be aggressive or sharky. I just asked a few good questions.
Oh, I love
and
that.
I asked people their concerns, and then I pitched to their concerns, and we created value. So persevere. Do not slink out of the office when you get a no. Treat it as an opening offer. And ask people what their concerns are. In that way, you're going to turn that no, come back and tell me, okay, into a yes.
Let us know, guys. And it's true, because it's that sort of shrinking, I'm so afraid they're going to say no. And then it could be like, who cares, next. That's one option. Or it's also like, if you want to negotiate more, go do it, And so, but it's the fear, right?
It's the fear. And here's the thing. It's not about you. People's no, generally speaking, is not about you. I've had a number of people who said no to something, and then 2 months later came back and they're like, Alex, are you still offering that thing? It may not just be the right time, right?
You're
So
like, yes, and it's 3 times more.
That's what I'm talking about.
I love it. And Carrie Gallant is here. Hi, Carrie. She's saying, so she is an expert in negotiation as well. And she's saying the number one question I hear from women about negotiation is exactly that. What if they say no? I love Alex's point. It's just the start of the conversation. It's an opening. Oh my gosh, I love this. So listen, guys, if you are watching, if you got tons of value out of this video, 2 things I want you to do. Number 1, post in the comments your biggest takeaway from the conversation that Alex and I have had. Please share this conversation on your social and tag Alex. Let's get those book sales moving on Monday. Let's get them moving even more because you sold a lot of books already. Let's get them moving even more on Monday, guys. Let us leverage the power of women helping women to get this bestseller action happening, because this book does need to be in the hands of so many women. You are amazing. Let's share with people where they can go to learn more about you, to get your book. Where do you want them to go?
Yes. Okay. So you can go to my website, which is Alex Carter Asks. That's ASKS.com. I have a community there. Alex Carter Asks. There are links for you to purchase the book. There's also a way for you to contact me. If you have questions that I didn't answer, please find me there or on LinkedIn or on Instagram at Alexandra B. Carter.
Love it. Super. So guys, if you could put that in the comments, alexcarterasks.com. alexcarterasks.com. If you can put it in the comments, head on over there, get this book, give it to your daughters. I wish that I had had this book as a younger woman too. I mean, I'm going to now also, but before for sure. I think it's, valuable for all women.
I do too. I wrote the book that I needed when I was younger and didn't have.
That's right. And maybe we all need reminders of it on an ongoing basis. Or is that just me? Okay, awesome. Listen, it was so great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Eleanor.
So much. Yeah, have a great rest of the week. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.